Everybody wants me to succeed. Everybody wants the best for me. Hello and welcome to Music Dreams TV. Today's guest is Will Henshall.
Yeah, Henshall, that's how it's pronounced. Yeah.
Hello, Will Henshall.
Hi.
So, for those of you who don't know, Will is a UK pop star, right?
I was to say is. Yeah, in the early 90s I was in a band called Londonbeat.
Londonbeat, yes.
Londonbeat, and we had a string of hits, starting in '89 and ending in '95, something like that. We were UK based, but spent a lot of time here in California actually. So.
Very cool, yeah. Londonbeat, I definitely remember Londonbeat.
Yeah.
And the hit song, I've Been Thinking About You.
I've been thinking about you.
I've been thinking about you. So who wrote that song?
I was the major writer on that song and in the band. So it was me and the singers. We wrote together. And sort of by definition, a major writer, what that really means is that you're the guy that started the song, that came up with the idea. I've been thinking about you. I had various things, parts and pieces of that particular song. And then Londonbeat was me and 3 singers. It was an unusual lineup.
Okay.
And in the studio, I used to double track most of the instruments. I play guitar and keyboards and bass. I'm not very good at programming drums, but I'm good enough to kind of get the song together. So, and then the singers were Jimmy Helms, Jimmy Chambers, and George Chandler. They were the other 3 members of the band. And I used to get the song kind of, most of the way there, and then we'd get together, and then they would come in and finish the song off. And
nice.
They would often provide the phrase that pays.
Phrase that pays?
Yeah.
So what is that?
Well, when you're writing a song, you often have an idea of the structure of the song. And there's a really good one in this example. So the song that I wrote was, I've been thinking about you, I've been thinking about you, I've been thinking about you, something like that.
Yeah.
But when we got together with the singers, because they're soul vocalists and they just know about how to move the melodies around, they went, I've been thinking about you, I've been thinking about you, I've been thinking about you, thinking about you. So you can see I had the framework, but they added the phrase that pays. They added the kind of the phrasing of the song that made it, gave it the soul. And so as a result, sure, I'd got maybe 80% of the song there before I met them, but the 20% that they put in was much more valuable than 20%.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had an arrangement around that, and it worked really well.
Very cool.
It was very inspiring to write with such incredible vocalists. These 3 guys, they were much older than I was and had much more success at the time than I had. And
how long did the Londonbeat last?
so I started Londonbeat in 1987, a long time ago, right?
Yeah.
And I started it in London. I was a record producer working for the major labels and a recording engineer. And the singers were session singers. So these were 3 guys who'd sung on many, many hits in the 80s. In fact, we discovered once that between the 3 singers, they had sung on over 2,000 hit records.
Wow.
They worked with every major artist in the world. Yeah, from Clapton to Tina Turner to Robert Plant to Paul Young. It just went on and on, because they were always working. They're amazing close harmony, male R&B backing singers. So when I came along, we were kind of backroom guys. We both written and recorded and done a lot of things for other artists, and we were like, we can do this ourselves. And that's how it worked.
So you did do it yourselves?
Yeah. It was an unusual band because there was me. If you think of a traditional kind of 2-guy band, like say at the time, there was Tears for Fears, a good example. There's someone singing and then someone else, playing instruments, or any other band where there's kind of just 2 people. And I originally wanted to put together a 2-piece, just me and a singer, and then we would together kind of put it together. But when I met Jimmy Helms, who's the lead singer in Londonbeat, he had these other 2 guys he worked with all the time. And at our first meeting, all 3 of them showed up.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, wow. And they were such established close harmony singers that they had this beautiful technique of singing together, and it was just extraordinary to have my songs just come to life like this.
That's super cool.
Yeah, and then we signed to RCA Records worldwide, and then MCA Records here. Actually, it was RCA Records for the rest of the world, and then we signed later to MCA Records for the States.
So was that easy for you because of where you were, to sign to labels?
Things have changed so much now. It's almost irrelevant to say how it was, but the basis of it is that I was back in London. I've been living in New York for a while, and I was back in London. Because I was a record producer and I was working for all the major labels doing all kinds of dance stuff and I would say trash for cash really at the time, I knew a lot of people. So it was fairly easy in some respects to just go to the contacts I had with a project. But this is true now as it was then. You can only go to really critical contacts you have in your network once with something.
Okay.
So, for instance, now I've got really good friends who are like running the major labels and managing all these big acts, and there's some guys I know just very well personally who can connect the dots and do all kinds of things. You can't ever go to someone like that with a project that is not quite finished, that's not quite right. You've got to walk in and go, this is the project, this is how it's going to go, this is how people like it, these are now you go, we've had this many YouTube hits,
So go in prepared.
You've got to go in not only prepared, you've got to go in with the battle plan down.
Wow.
The music business is the most competitive, insane business of all. Well, it's not as bad as the fashion business or the film business, which is even more ridiculous in terms of spitting you out.
So is that how you walked in back then?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I did back then. We actually did it the other way around. We signed a publishing deal to Warner Chappell Music, wrote 5 songs, went to Warner Chappell Music, got a pretty decent advance at the time to help us fund that. And then I met a management company called Hyperkinetics, and that was Sandra Turnbull and her then husband, Kenny Smith. And they managed Eurythmics.
Okay.
At the time.
That's super
one
cool.
of the biggest bands in the world. And so then they were looking for one more act to kind of manage. And I walked in off the street wearing some ridiculous 80s outfit and said, I've got a couple of songs here, what do you think? And they heard the songs and they were like, this is kind of interesting stuff. And because we weren't green, we'd been around the business a lot. They didn't have to teach us. I was already, how old would I have been when I started that? I was probably 25, 26. I wasn't a kid, And the singers were older again. They were probably 10 or maybe even 15 years older than me at the time. So we didn't have to have the management teach us stuff.
Yes.
We knew about. We'd all toured. We'd all done all kinds of stuff already.
In your write-up on LinkedIn, you mentioned that you learned about how to get songs on the radio.
Yeah.
So what did you learn?
How do you get songs on the radio? This is true now as it was then.
Oh, it is? Okay, great.
Yeah. So, radio-friendly songs are all about the songs themselves and the production, of course. But it's very easy as a young writer, as a young musician, to get the two things confused. So, production values and production tricks and the latest synth sounds and the latest vocal effects and drum stuff, it goes out of date very quickly. So you can have a hit record just because it's really hip sounding. It's really fresh and it's really like, wow, what is that thing? But it'll go really out of date. So you've got a shelf life with that stuff, and it'll be all over the radio, but then next year it'll sound really dated.
Yes.
But there are artists that have really timeless songs that can keep, Sting being basically an old fart these days, but his songs are always timeless. That means that there's a strength in the song which sits outside of the production. Every so often you'll have a song come along that has the quality of melody and the thing that it's talking about at the same time as having a very interesting production. And those are the huge hits.
So who are those producers? in your opinion?
It changes all the time, but the most successful pop producer at the moment, I would say, is probably Dr. Luke, who does the Miley Cyrus, and who else? If you just look up Dr. Luke, you'll see his stuff he's the guy, he's the pop guy.
So would that be considered it will be outdated in a year or so?
His stuff will sound, he did like Wrecking Ball and all of these, Katy Perry and. If you just look him up, you'll find it. Yeah, his stuff is all about production, but the material that he has a team of people. I don't know him personally. I just know about him. He has a team of people who work for him, so it's really like a factory, and then he's just knocking them out one by one.
Yeah.
And there's always been that pop thing around.
So who's one producer like Sting's music that would produce something that's timeless, in your opinion?
Nigel Goodrich is someone I know who's like that. He produces Radiohead, and I think he's done Coldplay and a bunch of other things. And it's all about, the band Coldplay are pretty timeless in a lot of ways.
Yes,
they have a sound. He's got a vocal thing. A couple of their previous albums weren't so good. The new one is really beautiful. So the business has changed so much that there's no longer a specific way of having success anymore. When I started, it was all back in the day, it was all about getting a publishing deal and a recording deal, and then getting a great management, and then recording an album, and then getting a single out, and then getting it on the radio, and then going and doing a tour and selling stuff, and then merchandise and so on. The whole business has changed now.
So how would you do it today if you were 25?
The simple answer to if you're a 25-year-old singer or songwriter or a musician today, there are opportunities to you that we never had. So it was something like this. If you were signed to a major label, you have a 1 in 2 chance of an album that you record being released. So you have a 50% failure rate that you recorded the album for the major label, they may not release it.
Wow.
Every other album they recorded, they wouldn't release.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. And then if your album's released, I'm not quite sure of these ratios, but it's something like this. If your album's released, what's the chance of having a hit single on it? It's pretty tiny. You're signed to a major label, your album did get released during that 50%. Now you're going to have a hit. What's the chance of that? Maybe 10%? So now you're down to 5%. So you have a 1 in 20 chance of being signed to a major label, having your album out, and having a hit from it. You're a 1 in 20 chance. The math was crazy, the way that it worked back then, and it's changed a little now with 360 deals, where someone signs you up for everything that you earn and a piece of that. What used to happen is the label would look at you in a way of recouping their investment. So what that means is, let's say you got $500,000 to make an album and to live on for 4 guys for 2 years. Say whatever that number is. So the label now have spent $500,000 on you. So they are going to now take, you release the albums and you release the singles. What's going to happen now is they're selling albums, say, at $10 a pop, and then there's retail in that. So let's say they get $4 for each one. So they've got to sell $4 worth times however many to get their album, to get their money back. But it's different for you as the band, because you're only getting your money back from 10% of the proceeds.
Wow.
So the label will recoup their cost a long time before you do, because you have to spend you have to sell, let's say you're on a 10% deal. That means an album back in the day used to be $10, so you'd be about $1. So you'd have to sell 500,000 albums to get at a buck each, to get your money back. So there's 2 things that used to happen, which is them recouping and you recouping. And in practice, for you to be able to recoup, you used to have to sell more than 2 million albums. And that's incredibly difficult to do. 2 million albums for you to recoup.
Wow.
So let's go back to the chances. Look at these numbers again, right? So you have a 50% chance of your album not being released. What is your chance of being asked to do a second album for the label?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? That's about whether they've recouped on your first album, let alone you. And so the chance of being asked to do a second album on a label is tiny too. The whole thing was just an insane numbers game. So now that's all different, right? So now what you can do is, there's a couple of incredible things that have changed. I used to have a $1 million recording studio with big mixing desk, an automated mixing desk, and multi-track tape machines, and racks of gear, and all the rest of it. I can do exactly the same things with a fairly decent microphone. But, you know, like these Rode mics or some of these other mics. You can buy them in the Apple Store. They're $200. Goes in the USB port of your computer. With the software that your Mac comes with,
wow,
I can do exactly the same thing. You can do pretty much anything I could do in that studio with a Mac for $999 from the Mac Store today. Exactly.
Wow.
What's up with that?
Yeah.
Well, you got to know how to do it, but
Yes.
equally you had to do that in a studio. You had to know how to do it, right? So there's the fact that you don't need to have access to $1 million studio, and the fact that you don't need to have, I used to have a vocal mic that we sang with in Londonbeat that cost us back then, I don't know, $20,000.
Wow.
It's called a Neumann U67, if anybody's interested, a classic vocal mic. Well, there's a Telefunken mic now that is better for $1,100 for a really beautiful vocal mic, but the Rode mic, which is like $210 from the Apple Store, is so close it doesn't freaking matter. It's so close, it's fine. You can be really particular about the sound and so on, but the chance of anything you record being a hit is so tiny, it doesn't matter as long as it's good enough and it sounds great. So we've got technology that you can access that's very, very inexpensive, and now you don't have to have a label release to the record stores to do the distribution, to get it on the radio. It's all different. So if I was a 25-year-old now, I would be writing songs. I would be recording them myself, as everybody is doing. I would be testing them on a live audience. I would be out playing on Santa Monica 3rd Street and watching which one of these songs is reacting with the people. I would be doing stuff on YouTube. I would be getting reaction and looking at numbers. I would be creating community. I would be incredibly generous with my audience.
Nice.
So you can either come to life from abundance or scarcity, right? That's this kind of a cosmic consciousness. Am I going to try and keep everything mine as scarcity, so people have to pay me to come and see me and access this, or am I going to create abundance in my life with everything else? And the way to do it now is the abundance principle. You've obviously got to make a living, but if you are completely open and free with what you're doing, and your art is connecting to an audience, they will support you. They will support you. You can do things such as you can do a tour if you build your own following. About the what's it called, the 1,000 fans or the long tail fans, what's that called? You can do things where you can do a show in a town, and then you can have, getting to the venue, put a free show on somewhere, and if you're good, people will show up. You can charge people who are your real fans to come and meet you and have dinner with you. You can charge people to go and do a show in someone's house over there. There's all these ways you
house
can.
Concert. Did we answer the question about how you would get a song on radio today? So you talked about producers, but how would you actually get it on to the radio station?
It doesn't really matter.
No? So you wouldn't even try, or?
Eventually, what will happen is that radio will pick up on the way that these artists are coming through. But the power of mainstream radio, it certainly has a lot of power, of course it does, but it's not so critical as it used to be. It used to be that you had to have a song on the radio to be able to, Londonbeat, we were very radio friendly, very radio friendly band, and our songs were played all over the world, everywhere. Thinking About You is still played on the radio all the time.
So do you still make money from Londonbeat? So is that how you support yourself?
About half of my income is from music still.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So how did Londonbeat end, and why? And are you still in music today?
Londonbeat ended, my role in the band ended in 1995. And it's like any relationship, you just get to the point where you need to just move on. And we just me and the lead singer Jimmy and I, we just written everything that we wanted to write, and I just needed to go in a different direction. So I quit in 95, and I got interested in high tech. And I started a project called Res Rocket Surfer, which was called Rocket Network eventually, and that was high tech it ended up as a jamming system or as a music collaboration system for Logic Audio, Pro Tools, and Steinberg. I raised a lot of money and moved to San Francisco and created a big team of developers, and we made this thing called Rocket Network, which later on, just very fast winding forward, I sold to Avid.
Okay.
It became part of Pro Tools.
Nice.
It was called DigiDelivery, and it's in Pro Tools.
Excellent. So are you in music today?
Yes, I'm in music today.
Doing what?
So these days I do two things. I've recently started songwriting again on a much more serious basis.
Yeah?
This is a very early stage to talk about it, but yes, I've recently started really seriously writing again, which is exciting.
Solo or with other people?
With other people.
Oh, cool.
Writing for other people or with other people.
Oh, excellent.
And I run a thing called Focus at Will. And Focus at Will is an online service that provides specific music for people to concentrate, and it helps focus and concentration when they're working and studying. So it's all about music, it is. But it's the very opposite of the kind of music we've been talking about now. It's about music that is played in the background while you're doing something else. So this is music without lyrics, without any vocals, without any strong melodies, and this is all about, essentially about neuroscience, the way that people's brains react to music in the background.
Very cool.
But it is music.
So do you create those instrumentals yourself?
We license them, we commission them, yeah. Focus at Will has a number of different genres in it. If anybody wants to look at it, it's Focus at Will. Just put it in Google, you'll see it.
That's very cool.
So it's like a sort of a streaming music service that all of the channels are very specifically geared at music that you play in the background. There's a timer on the app, for instance. You can say, I want to work for 60 minutes or 100 minutes. So.
Super cool. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to musicians out there, independent musicians, or?
Yeah, music is a living language, and if you are, it's about why you're doing it. Why are you doing music? Why are you doing this? Do you want to be famous? Are you trying to get rich? Why? You've got to really look at why you're trying to create this. It's the most insane way of making a living. It's really difficult. But the secret is understanding that music is a living language, and the messages that you are talking and providing need to connect to people in a real way. And what a lot of younger artists don't realize is that a song is the lyrics, the words, and the melody. That's legally what it is. Summertime and the living is easy. That's the song. So if you're creating songs that have all of these things in them, all these, all the production stuff going on, and maybe, you're basing it on a lot of effects, and the thing that people respond to are the melodies and the lyrics. Nothing else. Nothing else matters. Long time.
Cool.
So yeah, I'm all about melody and a lyric.
A real true songwriter.
Yeah.
Very cool. I love it.
I am, yeah.
Well, thank you for watching, everyone. Thank you, Will.
Thank you very much.
Lovely to meet you, and we'll see you next time.